Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for another Modus Business Spotlight. I'm not Mark Spalander. My name's Andrew Moon. I'm the marketing manager here at Modus. I'll start by giving you a quick introduction about who Modus are, what we do, and how we support businesses. So we're an accountancy and business support firm based here in Witney. We're not your traditional firm in that we don't just rely on providing you with your end of year accounts and you don't see us all the time. We actively engage with you over the course of the year, and we help provide you with the data guided support that you need through analysing your finances. So it's very much an all-encompassing service that it can involve mentoring and coaching if you wish, but yes, we can do the basics as well. It totally is up to you. I'm joined today by Dan Sager from Fab Biker PR, a specialist PR agency based here in Witney. And I'll leave Dan to do a quick introduction about himself.
Oh, hello to some familiar faces and to some not so familiar faces. So my name's Dan Sager. I founded the Fabulous Biker Boys in 1996. And as you've probably guessed from the name, we're involved in motorcycling. We're a public relations agency, and we specialise in helping businesses who don't have the time or the resources or the expertise to do their own public relations. And what we try and do is we try and offer them something we call the plug-in PR service. And what that means is that we will do absolutely everything for them. So if they've got customer newsletters that need to go out, or social media that needs managing, or press releases that need writing, or products that need getting into magazines or onto YouTubers or with influencers, we manage all of that for them. But we don't just manage it for them, we actually do it in such a way that it's continually happening all the time. So all they have to think about is answering the occasional email from us saying, we're going to focus on these products from you this month, is that okay? So the idea is that everything happens automatically. So it's a bit like an automated payroll or any of those things. It's something that happens for the client without them needing to invest too much time or energy, making sure the person they're paying to do it for them is actually doing something.
Brilliant. I'm sure everyone's sort of keen for me just to get going. So we'll jump straight in. So Modus Business Spotlight is all about asking people who have been there and done it, founded businesses and have grown them. And having Dan here today, we're going to quiz him a bit on how he started his business, the challenges that he overcame, and see what his plans are going forward. So to start with, Dan, sort of a bit of background. Why did you want to start the business, and how did it all get going?
So I suppose there were three main reasons why I decided to start my own business, and I think anybody who's started their own business or is thinking about it will recognise these three things. So the first one was actually wasn't very happy doing what I was doing. I was managing a company that distributed motorcycle accessories. I love motorcycles, and that was all really, really good. So that was the good bit. The bad bit was I had the classic middle management conundrum that the boss was constantly berating me for the staff having days off and wanting more money and wanting more holidays and keeping them under control. And the staff were constantly unhappy that they weren't getting enough days off and they weren't getting enough holiday and they weren't being paid enough. And I was spending all my time dealing with stupid things like, people putting diesel in their company car that was a petrol car, or somebody having, just all these, or people having arguments with each other in the office, or stupid things like that. And I had no control over any of it. If I went to the boss and said, this person needs a pay rise, he'd say, we're not giving anybody a pay rise at the moment. If I went to the boss and said, this person's incompetent, they need sacking, he'd say, no, we can't sack them for this, that. And so there was that sensation that I was constantly in the middle getting a kicking. So that was the first reason. Second reason was that I accidentally discovered that I had a natural aptitude for public relations. Some people are good at mechanical things, some people are sporty. Turns out I'm good at talking to people about products and getting those products and services featured in magazines or featured by influencers. So I thought, well, I really ought to spend, I like doing this and I'm quite good at it. So I really ought to spend all my time doing something I'm quite good at, rather than spending most of my time doing stuff that I'm really not very good at. And the third reason was just that desire to be in charge of your own destiny. And I think things probably came to a head. I was feeling particularly insecure, and I went to the boss and said, look, I feel a lot better if I had some sort of share option in the business or something like that. And he kind of laughed me out of his office and said, this is my business, I founded it, and I'm holding on to it, which is perfectly fair, but actually it's of no use to me. It just made me feel that I was a very disposable asset. So I thought, well, actually, if I'm going to be working 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, I should be doing it for me and not for somebody else. I should be doing it because I've decided there's a benefit for me, not because somebody's told me I need to do it or because I have to cover for somebody else. So that's why I went it alone.
I think that's a really great answer. I mean, following your passion is something that I personally am very proud to say that I like to do. I absolutely love marketing to bits, and being able to do it as a full-time job, it doesn't seem like a job, which I think is always a nice thing. When you started back in 1996, things must have been very different to what they are now. How do you think you've changed? Has it been a sort of steady change, or been a bit of a leap?
This is the question that's really embarrassing, because it makes me sound like a dinosaur. Because when I started the business, we sent out press releases. We sent out press releases by first-class recorded delivery with a printed A4 sheet of paper in it and a photographic print 6 inches by 4 inches, even though we were metric at the time. And if something was urgent, you sent a fax, and it was just. So it's pre-internet, pre-email. We had mobile phones, but they certainly didn't have cameras on them. So everything was really, everything took forever. And actually, if a magazine needed a photograph urgently, I would ride or drive to the magazine with a folder full of photographic prints and give them to them. So it was very different. One of the key changes now is because everything can happen immediately, people assume that everything must happen immediately. So people will phone you up on your mobile phone and say, oh, we urgently need you to email over some photographs. And you're thinking, yeah, but I'm in a lay-by on the A43. It's just because you can get hold of me doesn't mean I can do it. So it can make life much more stressful, although also much easier. So I suppose the biggest changes have been technology and keeping up with technology. And also, that's had some key changes, because we've gone from, for example, writing newsletters for companies that were mailed to their customers. We've then gone to writing newsletters that were emailed to customers. And actually now, increasingly, people use social media to communicate. And we find that with Facebook pages, people will send messages on Facebook rather than sending an email or picking up the telephone. So everything's constantly, it's the same thing, but it's just happening through different channels.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. The idea that response time and being reactive has completely changed. You can't be complacent anymore. So when people email you saying, I'd like a new press release, it's the same with us. If someone emails us and says, I'm looking for an accountant, it's important that you respond to them as quickly as possible and get yourself in front of them. Obviously, that's quite difficult at the moment, but Zoom is doing a cracking job for a lot of companies and hopefully making the process a bit easier. I think one thing that I'm quite keen to ask you is, obviously now is quite a challenging time to be running a business. But is this the biggest challenge that you've faced, or has there been something else that you feel has been your biggest challenge?
Well, I think the biggest challenge starting out is always cash flow. And actually right now, cash flow is probably a massive problem for a lot of businesses. And some of what I experienced with cash flow, you can't replicate very easily in a business. But yeah, when I started out the business, I worked from home. I worked from the back bedroom. My father had decided to give up driving so he gave me his rather elderly 1 litre Nissan Micra automatic. So that was my company car. You know, there were no flash offices. But what I did learn very early on was that actually it's really important to spend money on what matters. So actually leasing the latest C-Class Mercedes isn't important, or leasing a fancy office with a receptionist isn't important at that stage. But some things do matter. So I invested in a word processor, a cutting edge word processor, which took a 3.5-inch floppy disk that I could save documents onto. And I invested in a fax machine, and I invested in some properly graphically designed business cards. So I had a nice logo on a nice quality business card to give people. And so investing in what mattered made a huge difference. And I think probably as we get into this point where people are increasingly have members of staff working from home, I would say that that key thing is making sure that if people are working from home, they've got what they need to work from home comfortably. So they've got the right computer equipment, the right internet connection. I mean, actually, if they need to go onto fibre, give them an extra 15 quid a month to spend on some fibre. You know, it's those sort of things. You know, it's a little thing that makes a big difference.
Nigel was just messaged and said, you are talking his language, which I think everyone can relate to at the moment. Investing in the right equipment so you're able to work from home has been so key to keep businesses up and running during this time. And I think it's also key to mention that during the early stage of a business where you don't necessarily have a separate office or anything like that, setting yourself up with equipment that you don't have to replace all the time and getting the best that you can afford is key, so that it just gives you that base to be able to build on. So obviously you've been running your business for a number of years now, and I would imagine that you've gained a lot of experience and advice that you've been given over the years. But what would you like to know before you started Fab Biker PR? What would be the key bit of information that you'd want to know?
So the key thing, I wish I'd been when you run your own business, if you're going to be successful, you've got to be disciplined, and you've got to be strict with yourself, and you've got to be honest with yourself. And that's really, really difficult, particularly if you're in public relations, where you're always putting a gloss on things. I'm definitely an optimist. So my business plan when I started out in business was to make sure I had enough money to cover the mortgage, and then I'd kind of find more business as I was confident I'd get more business because I thought I had a good product at a good price, and you know, and I was right. I successfully covered my mortgage, which wasn't very big, and more business came my way because of word of mouth, which was kind of okay. But what I realised was that actually, because I didn't have a real long-term plan, I ended up taking the business that came my way. It's a bit like having a shop on the high street. You take the business of the people who walk in through your door, but actually what you should really be doing if you're a high street business is thinking, how do I attract really good, big spending customers to my shop? So I tended to, because I had a if you like, a budget offering, I attracted budget customers with budgets. So I ended up having to work quite hard for lots of people with not much money to spend, which wasn't great. And a friend of mine called Chris Gardner does mentoring work, and he really switched. I've been quite. It's difficult with mentors because you have to find somebody who's on your wavelength, as opposed to sort of business advice, but just somebody to sort of coach you through things. And he really helped me develop a serious plan for the business. So, actually refine what you're offering, charge as much as you can for it, and go out and find people and have a plan for finding people and have a long-term plan for finding people. So you want to find a new client every 3 months, and that's totally revolutionised the business. So I think it is actually having a really clear plan for business development with some key milestones, so you can actually keep moving forwards.
Target setting and kind of giving yourself goals is something that we try to focus businesses on quite a lot here at Modus. And I think it's something that's very underrated as a piece of advice to give someone, just to set yourself a target. It can be as simple as we want to get X amount of customers per month, or we want to hit X amount per the end of this month and X amount per the end of the following month. But it just gives you that extra bit of focus to be able to sort of guide your business through the tricky times, and also provide you something to go back with. It's very, very easy when you start a business to be able to get distracted by things and lose track of what you're trying to achieve. So having that reminder at the back of your mind, just going, oh, you should be looking to achieve this month, is a really good thing. And the other point that you touched on about working with people, finding the right types of customers, I think that is a very, very valid point. And if Mark was here, he'd be screaming down the lens at you, telling you it's important that you work with people that you like and that you enjoy working with. You want to get that enjoyment out of work. You don't want it to be a slog. And if you're working with people who you don't enjoy working with and they cause you problems or bottlenecks with your schedule, it's important that you assess that and evaluate, is it actually worth continuing that relationship? So obviously now is challenging, but what does the future hold for Fab Biker PR and yourself and your team?
Well, so we've the past 6 months have been a very, it's been a wake-up call. I think for everybody in so many different ways, it's been a wake-up call. And in business, it's highlighted how important it is to be adaptable. So if I just talk about what happened over the past, the typical PR man, you see, you've asked me a question about the future, and I'm now going to talk about the past, but we'll get to the future in a minute. Bear with me. So the lockdown affected our clients in lots of different ways. So some of them had to close their doors completely, stop selling, business stopped. Some of our clients continued in sort of one more limited way or another, and some of them actually pretty much, like mail order companies, pretty much it was business as usual. But for all those clients, it was really, really important to make sure that their customers knew what was going on and knew that stuff was happening, even if stuff wasn't happening. So for the guys who were still business as usual, it was really important the customers knew that it was business as usual. They could still order stuff from them and get it from them, and it'd be delivered, and it'd be safe, and also that people weren't just ignoring the rules, that they were operating within the rules. With the companies who were offering a more limited service, it was really important that people knew what they could get and couldn't get from them, and when they could and couldn't get it. And for the people who had temporarily shut, it was really, really important that customers knew what that meant in terms of the fact that actually just because they closed their doors, it didn't mean they weren't reopening. And in fact, with some of them, they were restructuring their manufacturing to make it COVID secure when they reopened. And it was really important that we helped them to keep talking to people during that period. And so for the future, what it's taught us is that we have to be much more adaptable for our clients and not just keep offering them the same thing day in, day out, but actually find different ways of doing things for them. So, for example, print magazines are in a bit of a decline at the moment. And actually lockdown, you might have thought that people would be reading more magazines in lockdown, but in fact that isn't the case, because it was difficult for people to buy them and people weren't going out to buy things as much, and some of the shops that sold the magazines weren't open. So actually we need to think, well, we used to have lots and lots of products featured in magazines, but if there are less magazines, there'll be less opportunity. So where else can we get stuff featured? And actually increasingly, there are some really good YouTubers out there who are spot on for our sort of clients' products and their audience. So it's thinking, okay, well, we're going to devote 40% less energy to magazines now, and that 40% we're now going to focus on building a sort of database of YouTubers that we work with and we've got a good relationship with. So it's really about adaptability.
Yeah, I think the COVID situation has very much outlined for a lot of businesses that there's not a one size fits all approach. And I think certainly from my point of view, it's been, I joined Modus at pretty much the start of the pandemic. So it was a very sort of thrown at the deep end a bit. But what I've realized is that you can't sit still in a market like this. You can't afford to ever count your chickens and ensure that what you're doing at the moment may work for a little bit, but it quickly changes, and you've got to be able to adapt and move your business forward in that way. I think that's an excellent point, Dan. So to kind of close off this part of the session, so what would be the most important bit of advice you would give any startup business?
Oh well, this is the wisdom of experience. If only I'd been able to follow this advice from the beginning. This is actually, it's good for any business. It doesn't matter whether you're a startup business or whether you're a business of 100 years standing. Stay focused on what you do. It's really, really easy to get distracted by what seem to be wonderful money spinning opportunities. And very early on in my business, we were approached by a Dutch company who made motorcycle clothing and had a helmet brand, and they wanted us to be their UK agents. And I thought, brilliant, I know all about selling to shops, I know all about this, I can do that. I knew the company, I knew the products, really easy to do. And so we grabbed it with both hands, and I thought, great, this is going to make us more prestigious. And of course, it absorbed all my time. The phone was constantly ringing with motorcycle dealers because, you know, they got a helmet where the visor had gone wrong, or they needed clothing in a different size that wasn't available. And we had customers phoning up because they wanted to know where they could buy something in their area, and it wasn't available at their local. And it was just, I was overwhelmed with stuff that meant that although we made money doing it, we'd have made so much more money if we just focused on doing what we did with public relations. And so it's those two words, opportunity cost. And whenever you think, oh God, we can make some money doing this, just think, actually, if I wasn't doing this, what could I make some money doing elsewhere? And probably the best example is DIY. My wife now will not let me do any DIY because it will take me hours. I'll probably break the thing I was doing, and then we'll have to pay somebody else to come in and do it properly. So actually, it's much, much better if I go to work and earn some money doing something, and then we can pay someone to come in and do the DIY properly. The opportunity cost is exactly that. If I take a day off work to do some DIY, I will not be earning money at work, and actually I probably won't do the job as well as it could be done by a professional.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice, completely spot on. I'd like to thank you, Dan, for taking your time out of your day to do this. I'll open the kind of the chat channel for anyone that's got any questions. So if you'd like to type them in the chat now, that's absolutely fine. We've had one question that came in, which was, how important was your friends and family when starting your business?
Oh, well, yeah, that's a really that's a really good question. I was very lucky in that when I started the business, my partner at the time, who's now my wife, was in full-time employment, so we had a bit of security. We had a small mortgage. We didn't have children at the time, so actually it was really we didn't have too much to worry about. We were fairly secure. I think the really scary thing is when you're, I think if you've got and so I had the support of my partner. She knew I was very unhappy in my work. And so that was very, very important. My family, my father had been self-employed for most of his life. So he was very comfortable with the idea. My parents were supportive of me, and yeah, my family also thought it was very exciting. So yeah, it's incredibly important. And also, yes, my friends were brilliant. They helped me out. A pal of mine had some accounting training, so he helped me get my sort of books straight. So going forward, I had everything I needed. I wasn't out of control with you know, I had my bank account straight and I had my filing straight and I knew where I was going with everything. So yeah, really, really important.
Yeah. No, that's something that we hear time and time again, is that having that support network around you that one, you can kind of vent your frustrations to, and plus get the advice that you need to be able to move you forward is absolutely critical. When you started out, was there some kind of a key moment where you thought this can become my full-time job? Was it a certain benchmark that you hit with customers, or was there a certain customer that got you to that point?
Yeah, well, I sort of cheated, because I knew I wasn't very happy. So I had a couple of conversations with businesses I knew in the motorcycle industry who I thought would be up for the service I was offering, and they pretty much bit my hand off. So I knew before I started that I got enough. So it wasn't like it wasn't one of those really difficult things when it's a hobby job that you then try and make your full-time job. So yeah, that made it a lot easier.
Brilliant. The last chance for anyone to ask any more questions. No. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dan. Again, it's been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully, everyone's found that useful. We'll be uploading a recording of the webinar onto Facebook, and Dan will be sharing it out for his network as well, I'm sure. That will be with you either later today or later on this week. So thanks again, Dan, and hopefully you'll join us again soon.